Welcome back, everyone, to The Deep Dive. This time, we're taking a deep dive into a super fascinating career path, becoming an import-export manager in the world of household goods.
We've got our hands on some really cool resources today. A detailed career guide, a comprehensive interview guide, and we'll even be looking at how AI can give you that extra edge in this competitive job market.
All right, so let's jump right in. What's the mission for this deep dive?
Well, we want to equip you with the knowledge and the confidence to absolutely ace that interview.
Love it. I have to say, going through the career guide, I was struck by the balance they highlight. On one hand, the potential for a lucrative salary,
Yeah,
but on the other hand, that high level of responsibility that comes with it.
absolutely. I mean, think about it. You're dealing with people's precious belongings, their memories, their entire lives packed into these shipments.
That's a lot of pressure. Okay, so the career guide gives us the big picture, but what about the nitty-gritty of the interview itself? Let's decode those questions.
Sounds good.
So, question number one, and it's a classic. Can you explain your experience with international trade regulations and compliance?
The dreaded compliance question. But don't worry, it's not as scary as it sounds.
They're not expecting a textbook definition here, right?
Right. They want to hear about your real-world experiences.
The guide mentions things like customs laws, import-export controls, even trade sanctions. Have you ever had to deal with any of those?
Oh, absolutely. I once had a shipment held up in customs for weeks because of some missing paperwork. It was a nightmare, but it taught me a valuable lesson about the importance of dotting your I's and crossing your T's.
So, how did you resolve it?
Well, it involved a lot of phone calls, emails, and even a few trips down to the port. But eventually, I managed to get everything sorted out, and the shipment was released.
That's what they want to hear.
It shows you can handle those high-pressure situations and find solutions when things go wrong.
Exactly. And speaking of solutions, the guide actually provides a sample response to this very question. It talks about how the candidate successfully ensured a shipment met all compliance requirements by implementing a rigorous checklist system.
That's a great starting point. But here's a tip to really make your answer stand out. Briefly mention your knowledge of relevant international bodies, like the World Trade Organization or the International Chamber of Commerce.
I like that. It shows you're not just following the rules, you understand the bigger picture of global trade.
Exactly.
Okay, let's move on to another common question. Can you discuss your experience with negotiating contracts with international suppliers and customers?
The art of negotiation. This is where you really get to showcase your interpersonal skills and your ability to build relationships across borders.
The interviewer insight here is really interesting. It says they're not just looking for someone who can haggle over prices.
Yeah.
They want to see if you can build trust, navigate cultural differences, and ultimately secure those win-win agreements that benefit everyone involved.
It's like diplomacy on a smaller scale.
Totally. And the sample response in the guide emphasizes the importance of clear communication, active listening, and finding those creative solutions that meet everyone's needs.
Yeah, it's a solid framework, but to really bring it to life, share a specific anecdote about a time when you successfully negotiated a contract with an overseas partner. What were the challenges? How did you overcome them? What was the outcome?
Stories make all the difference. They make you relatable, memorable, and they demonstrate that you can walk the walk, not just talk the talk.
Exactly. And speaking of walking the walk, let's move on to a question that's all about logistics. How do you ensure that shipments are delivered on time and within budget?
This one's all about showcasing your organizational skills, your attention to detail, and your ability to think ahead and anticipate potential problems.
You got to be like a chess master thinking several moves ahead.
Absolutely. Because in the world of household goods, delays can mean more than just missed deadlines. They can mean families are stuck without their furniture, their clothes, their essential belongings. It's a huge responsibility.
And let's not forget the emotional aspect. People are entrusting you with their most cherished possessions.
So how do you convey all that in an interview?
Think of a time when you had to deal with a major logistical challenge. Maybe a shipment was delayed due to bad weather, a port strike, or some unforeseen circumstance. How did you handle it? Did you find alternative routes? Did you negotiate with suppliers to expedite delivery? Did you keep your customers informed every step of the way?
I love how the guide emphasizes the importance of proactive communication, both with your team and with your customers.
Absolutely. In this industry, transparency is key.
Okay, shifting gears a bit to risk management. How have you managed risk in your previous import-export roles?
Ooh, this is a good one. This is where you get to showcase your foresight, your problem-solving skills, and your ability to minimize potential problems before they even arise.
The guide highlights things like insurance, legal compliance, and quality control as key areas of focus.
Absolutely. You need to demonstrate that you understand the potential risks involved in international trade and that you have systems in place to mitigate them.
So what's a good example of how to answer this question?
Think about a time when you identified a potential problem and took proactive steps to address it. Maybe you discovered a supplier with questionable safety practices and implemented a new quality control checklist for incoming goods. Or perhaps you noticed a pattern of delays at a particular port and found an alternative route to avoid those bottlenecks.
Perfect. It shows initiative and a direct impact on the bottom line.
Right. And speaking of impact, let's talk about leadership. Here's the question. Can you discuss your experience with managing a team of import-export professionals?
This is where you get to shine as a leader. Show them you can motivate, inspire, and guide your team to success.
It's about more than just giving orders. It's about building a cohesive team, fostering collaboration, and creating a positive work environment where everyone feels valued and supported.
The guide talks about setting clear goals, providing constructive feedback, and resolving conflicts effectively.
Yeah, and don't just tell them. Show them. Share a story about a time when you had to lead your team through a challenging situation. Maybe you had to meet a tight deadline, deal with a difficult customer, or resolve a conflict between team members.
How did you approach the situation? What were the results? What did you learn from the experience? Those are the kind of stories that make you stand out as a leader.
And speaking of standing out, let's talk about continuous learning. How do you stay up to date with changes in international trade regulations and compliance?
The ever-changing landscape of global trade.
You got to be constantly on your toes.
So how do you demonstrate that you're a lifelong learner in this field?
Talk about the specific steps you take to stay informed. Do you attend industry conferences? Do you read trade publications? Do you subscribe to newsletters? Are you a member of any professional organizations?
The guide even suggests mentioning specific websites, journals, or thought leaders that you follow.
Exactly. It shows that you're proactive about expanding your knowledge and keeping your skills sharp.
And speaking of sharp skills, let's move on to a question that's at the heart of any customer-centric business. How do you ensure that customer expectations are met or exceeded in import-export operations?
The customer is king. And in the world of household goods, it's more than just delivering a product. It's about delivering a smooth and stress-free experience during what can be a very emotional and challenging time in people's lives.
Totally. So how do you convey that in an interview?
Share a specific example of a time when you went above and beyond for a customer. Maybe you proactively kept them updated on the status of their shipment, helped them resolve a problem with customs, or found a creative solution to meet their unique needs.
The guide highlights the importance of demonstrating your communication skills, your ability to build rapport, and your empathy for the customer situation.
Absolutely. It's about treating each shipment as if it were your own.
Okay, one last question before we take a break. This one's all about the financial side of things. Can you discuss your experience with managing budgets for import-export operations?
The money question. This is where you get to demonstrate your financial acumen and your ability to manage resources effectively.
The guide emphasizes showcasing your experience with forecasting, tracking expenses, identifying cost-saving opportunities, and maintaining profitability. So how do you bring all that to life in an interview?
Well, instead of just listing your skills, share a specific anecdote. Maybe you negotiated a more favorable shipping rate with a carrier or streamlined the documentation process to reduce administrative costs.
Great examples. It shows you're not just talking about saving money, you've actually done it.
Right. And speaking of doing it, before we move on, do you want to talk a bit about how RoleCatcher's AI can help with all this?
Absolutely. I'm super curious about how this technology can actually level up our interview game.
Me too. Let's dive into that after a quick break. So RoleCatcher, right. It's like this super cool AI tool that can help you tailor your answers for specific job roles.
Yeah. How does it actually work?
Well, let's say you're working on your resume or CV.
Okay.
RoleCatcher can actually analyze the job description and then suggest keywords, skills, those things that you really want to highlight to make your application stand out.
That sounds amazing. Almost like It takes the guesswork out of it.
Exactly. And it gets even better. When it comes to the actual interview practice, RoleCatcher offers these AI-powered tools where you can practice your answers to common interview questions.
So it's not just about what you say, but how you say it.
You got it. It can even analyze your tone, your pacing, even your body language,
Hey,
and then it gives you feedback to help you refine your delivery.
wow, that's pretty impressive. It's like having a personal coach, but it's AI.
Exactly. It's all about helping you present your best self in those high-pressure situations.
That's amazing. Okay, so RoleCatcher can help us with the interview prep, but what about the bigger picture?
You mean like the career path itself?
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
the career guide actually has some really valuable insights about that too.
Oh, like what?
Well, one thing that really stood out to me was the importance of continuous learning and certifications. The import-export landscape is constantly evolving.
Yeah, it's a fast-paced world.
Right, so you got to stay ahead of the curve. The guide specifically mentions the Certified International Trade Professional, CITP, and the Certified Supply Chain Professional, CSCP, as really valuable credentials to have in this field.
So even if someone doesn't have those certifications yet, would you recommend mentioning that they're interested in pursuing them?
Absolutely. It shows that you're committed to professional growth and that you're serious about building a career in this field.
It's like a signal to the interviewer that you're in it for the long haul.
Exactly. And another tip from the guide is to showcase your capabilities through a portfolio or by highlighting your contributions to the industry. Have you ever given a presentation at a conference or written an article for a trade publication?
I wish.
Well, even if you haven't, think about other ways you can demonstrate your expertise. Maybe you've volunteered for a relevant organization or helped to implement a new process at your current job. It's all about highlighting those tangible examples of your skills and experience.
So it's not just about what you know, but what you've actually done.
Precisely. And last but not least, the guide emphasizes the power of networking. Getting out there, attending industry events, connecting with people.
It's all about building relationships.
Exactly. The guide specifically mentions organizations like the International Air Transport Association, IATA, and the Institute for Supply Management, ISM, as great resources for connecting with professionals in this field.
So even if you're not actively looking for a job right now, it's a good idea to start building those connections.
Absolutely. You never know when an opportunity might arise. And speaking of opportunities, let's circle back to that last interview question we were discussing.
Oh, right, about navigating cultural differences.
Yeah, that one. It's a really important one, especially in the world of household goods, where you're dealing with people's most personal and cherished possessions. You need to be sensitive to those cultural nuances.
I think a lot of people might struggle with this question because they don't want to sound like they're stereotyping or making assumptions about different cultures.
Right. It's a delicate balance. But here's the key. Focus on your own experiences and how you've adapted your communication style or your approach to working with people from different backgrounds.
So share a specific anecdote.
Exactly. For example, you could talk about a time when you had to research the customs and etiquette of a particular country before a business trip to ensure that you were being respectful and culturally appropriate.
That's a great example.
Yeah.
It shows that you're willing to put in the effort to understand and respect different cultures.
Right. And another tip is to think about the specific cultural contexts relevant to the company you're interviewing with. Do they have a strong presence in any particular region of the world? If so, tailor your answer to reflect your understanding of those specific cultural nuances. It shows that you've done your research and that you're genuinely interested in their global operations.
I love that. It's all about showing the interviewer that you're not just looking for a job, you're looking for a company where you can truly thrive and contribute your unique skills and perspectives.
Exactly. And speaking of thriving, as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to emphasize that a successful interview isn't about memorizing answers or trying to be someone you're not.
It's about being authentic, right?
Exactly. It's about showcasing your genuine self, your passion for this field, your unique experiences and skills.
And remember, all the tools and resources we've discussed today, from RoleCatcher's AI-powered prep tools to the insightful guidance from our career guide, are here to support you on this journey.
You've got this.
So go out there, be confident, let your enthusiasm shine through, and most importantly, be yourself. Good luck with your interview.
It really is. And remember those pros and cons we talked about earlier? The high salary and the high pressure? This is where that pressure really comes into play.
Yeah, you're not just moving boxes. You're dealing with people's lives, their memories, their most precious belongings.
Right. Think about it. A family's dining table might represent generations of shared meals and laughter. An antique vase could be a cherished heirloom passed down through generations.
It's more than just furniture. It's imbued with personal and cultural meaning.
Exactly. And that's why sensitivity to cultural differences isn't just a nice to have, it's essential.
So how do you convey that in an interview without sounding, like you're stereotyping?
Focus on your own experiences. Share an anecdote about a time when you had to adapt your communication style or your approach to working with people from different backgrounds.
Give us an example.
Sure. Let's say you had to work with a supplier from a culture where it's considered rude to be direct. You might say something like, I learned to be more mindful of my communication style and to approach negotiations with a greater emphasis on building relationships and trust.
That's a great example. It shows that you're aware of those cultural nuances and that you're willing to adapt your approach.
Exactly. And another tip is to think about the specific cultural contexts relevant to the company you're interviewing with. Do they have a strong presence in any particular region of the world? If so, tailor your answer to reflect your understanding of those specific cultural nuances.
It's all about showing the interviewer that you've done your homework. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground today. We talked about the big picture of the career path. We decoded those tricky interview questions, and we even explored how AI can give us an edge in the job market.
It's been quite the deep dive.
It really has. Any final words of wisdom for our listeners as they prepare for their interviews?
Be yourself. Let your passion for this field shine through. And remember, all the tools and resources we discussed today are here to support you.
That's right. From RoleCatcher's AI-powered prep tools to the insightful guidance from our career guide, you've got everything you need to succeed. So go out there, be confident, and knock 'em dead.